Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala sahbihi man wala amma ba'd. Briefly, I want to talk about three philosophical terms used in Western philosophy. It's important for Muslims especially to know these three terms. The three terms are traditionalism, modernism, and postmodernism. Traditionalism is what they refer to and think of as things like cultural and religious traditions being passed down from generation to generation. So for us, we have our own religion, we have our chains of transmission, so we have transmitted knowledge going back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions in the early generations. And so we put great value in this, and we have sciences like the science of hadith, which ensure accuracy of transmission from generation to generation. Like we check their dabt, their accuracy of the transmission, and their adala, the uprightness and character of the transmitter. So that's traditionalism or tradition. Now in the West, they tend to look down on tradition nowadays. They think it's not accurate. They think it's not very helpful. They may think it's helpful, but maybe in your personal life, and that it should not enter the public sphere. So the next is modernism. Modernism, they say, generally may have started during the Industrial Revolution or the Age of Enlightenment, but many say it started around the 1900s, the turn of that century, the turn of the 20th century. Modernism is where, after basically starting to leave the Christian tradition of Europe, leaving the Catholic Church, they started turning more to science and their own reason and their own ability of what they call secular humanism, the idea that mankind can create its own utopia on Earth, and they can advance themselves and their societies and their development without relying on God, without having God in the picture. So they start to rely on themselves, relying on science, relying on technology and technological advancements. That's modernism. So modernism has a big focus on measuring things, understanding the world, on science, on technology. That's modernism. And industrial development. Postmodernism, which came up in the past 100 years or so, or maybe 80 years or so, when it became more popular, it started to reject modernism and be very critical of the culture in the West and some of the transgressions of their imperialism. So postmodernism started to reject the idea that things can be accurately measured and defined. They start to promote ideas like relativism, that everything is relative to the one who is viewing it. One example of this is in poetry. If you ever take a college poetry class, they're probably using ideas like relativism and these other postmodernist ideas, which are kind of critical of tradition and critical of modernism and critical of the previous generations. And they may say, for example, they may show you a poem, and they want you to bring up your own interpretation of the poem. Some of them have this idea that, okay, like my idea of poetry is a poet, he composes some stanzas, and he sends it out into the world, and the world does whatever they want with his poetry. Whereas as Muslims in our tradition, we typically try to understand the author's or the poet's perspective. We try to deliver some type of sharh or tafsir, tafsir of the Quran, or some type of sharh of the text. So we're a bit different. We believe that there is a concrete and objective reality. Allah is al-haq. He's the one who creates reality, and we try to understand reality through that lens of the Creator, and through prophethood and prophecy, and through revealed sources as a foundation. So our tradition gives us the foundation of our understanding in Islam. Whereas for them, they, each person has his own understanding of it, and they kind of, it's always changing. You'll notice every 10 years or so, Western culture has these radical changes. It's not concrete anymore. And that's one of the differences between truth and falsehood, and light and darkness. Is the truth, the light. Allah Himself is unchanging. So the closer you are to the truth, the more concrete it becomes. The further you are from the truth, the further out into the darkness you are, the further you are into falsehood, the more it's constantly changing, because it's actually like falling into non-existence. The further you are from al-haq, the less real you actually are, the less real the idea is. Falsehood is far from the truth. and eventually it's like it's vanishing, right? Like it says in the Quran, "Kullu man 'alayha fan wa yabqa wajhu rabbika dhul jalali wal ikram." In Surah Ar-Rahman, right? Everything is fani. It's like ephemeral. It's like it's vanishing, except the face of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? So Allah is the one through His baqa, His willing that something continue to exist is the reason it continues to exist, right? So we believe in concrete reality. We reject the ideas of postmodernism. Now there are some merits of modernism and postmodernism. One of the merits of modernism is it does motivate the society to work hard in things like science and the ulum, as you say in Arabic, in the physical sciences, which can be helpful for developing your society. But you don't want to rely on them, because at the end of the day, Allah is the true effector. A food does not really feed you except for the will of Allah. It has no effect except the effect that Allah wills for it to have. Same thing with the medicine. If somebody is sick, if you're trying to cure cancer and so on, a lot of illnesses actually are unrelated to what people are searching for with science. A lot of illnesses can be cured with just using Islamic means, working on the heart, for example. A lot of illnesses can actually just be caused from within yourself. Diseases of the heart, spiritual diseases. So using Islam and using our Islamic means and investigating our religion can bring great benefit to our society. And it's important to have the correct aqidah and worldview as well, because you'll notice that your society will have problems, mankind will have problems when we don't have the correct perspective on things. We're not relying on Allah Ta'ala, right? When you're relying on things other than Allah, you'll notice that eventually they kind of shift on you, that they're not concrete. They're going to move, and you're going to realize the lesson is that this thing is created by Allah, and it's only as good as Allah wills for it to be, right? You'll notice that American healthcare is very problematic. Like things are always shifting. The government just can't do the right thing, right? When the more the nafs is involved, and the less spirituality is, the less we bring Allah into the picture, the more problematic it can become, because all goodness comes from Allah. وَالشَّرُّ لَيْسَ إِلَيْكَ. Evil is not attributed to Him. So the further we are from Him, the more evil we have to deal with, the more darkness we have to deal with, and the more we seem to constantly have problems that we can't overcome. So even as religious people, if you're a religious person, you still need to make an effort. You still need to learn things of the dunya, how the dunya works. You need to learn some secular things as well. And we need to put ihsan into our work. If you're a social worker, if you're a mathematician, a math teacher, if you're working in a secular field, you still need to do well at it and the best that you can, and the more you learn your religion as well and learn your aqidah, the more you'll also begin to see Allah in that physical science, in math, in geology, in geometry, in medicine, especially medicine, even in nursing, in caring for people, in any profession, in a government job. You'll start to see Allah more in that work, and that's very important as well. And you'll start to have more ideas of how to make it better, inshallah ta'ala. So that's what I have. So that's tradition, modernism, and postmodernism. One of the merits of postmodernism, though, is a little bit critical of imperialism. It's like, we can't just be abusing people, and so on. It pointed out some of the hypocrisy in Western culture, but it wasn't very helpful. It doesn't bring up any solutions, really. It actually tends to break things down rather than build things up. So modernism is actually more useful probably than postmodernism. And then, of course, integrating tradition is the best thing you can do for your society when done intelligently. So that's what I have. Subhanakallah. Assalamu alaikum.